Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Zach, who's been supporting this channel as a general tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Zach, so again, Zach, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tech, Zach chose Tinybones Trinket Thief with a theme of discard. Tinybones is not only an incredibly effective discard commander, but also an incredibly adorable skeleton rogue. But this episode is not about the cuteness factor of Tinybones, so let's get into what Tinybones does. Tinybones is a 1/2 skeleton rogue that costs 1 and a black, and it has at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And by paying 4 black, each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. So Tinybones is essentially a card draw engine based off of discard. With just 1 trip around the table, it is possible to draw 4 cards. Now that does come at the very small price though of 1 life per card, and again that's very manageable in Commander. On top of that, Tinybones can be a fantastic finisher as well, draining your opponents out when they have no cards in hand. If none of your opponents have a hand, 6 mana basically gets you 30 life loss in total. So yeah, for a commander that's just a 1/2, this commander does a ton for you. Let's start with some simple discard spells with Vicious Rumors and Arterial Flow. Vicious Rumors is a sorcery for a black, and it's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent, then each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard, and you gain 1 life. Now this does a lot for us. Most importantly, it makes each of our opponents discard a card. And in this deck, this is essentially a delayed cantrip, because again at the end step, an opponent discarded a card, so yeah, we draw. An even bigger way to make our opponents discard though comes with Arterial Flow. It says each opponent discards 2 cards. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Now I believe we have just 1 vampire in this deck in total, but again that's not the part that we really care about, though it's nice if it actually happens. 3 mana to make each opponent discard 2 cards is huge. With 1 spell, we're essentially getting rid of 6 cards. One that can get rid of even more cards though is Delirium Skynes. It's a sorcery for 2 and a black, and it says each player discards 3 cards. So this does affect us as well, and we need to keep that in mind. But making every player get rid of 3 cards for 3 mana is huge. Again, the quicker that we can get our opponents down to 0 cards, the more that we can control the game, and then also the quicker we can finish them off with Tinybones. And again, keep in mind that we will be able to draw a card to replace this. Now outside of spells, we've also got some discard creatures that can help us out as well, like Burglar Rat and Rotting Rats. Apparently rats really care about discard, who knew? Anyways, when Burglar Rat enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. So on top of forcing opponents to discard and essentially cantripping, we also get a body on the field. And then Rotting Rats is similar, but it hits all players. But on top of that, we can actually get it back a second time by unearthing it. Now getting it back might only be temporary, but we do get that ETB, which is the important thing. Next up, let's talk about Bloodhusk Ritualist, which, hey look, it's the vampire I mentioned earlier. See, there's one. Anyways, a 2/2 vampire shaman for 2 and a black with multi-kicker black. When she enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card for each time it was kicked. So that's a fantastic way to make one player discard a ton of cards. There are plenty of times where this can just completely get rid of one player's hand. Next up, let's talk about some repeat discard effects, starting with some Specters. Hypnotic Spectre is a 2/2 flyer for 1 black, and whenever it deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. And forcing a card to be discarded at random can be a very brutal thing. It's hard enough having to get rid of a good card in your hand, but when you accidentally get rid of the best card in your hand, that's a big deal. And again, since it says flying, we can usually get it through on at least one of our opponents on each turn. And then Goldrawn Spectre is similar, but different. It starts off as just a 2/2 flyer for 2 black, but it gets +3/+3 as long as an opponent has no cards in hand, and whenever it deals common damage to a player, that player discards a card. So unfortunately that discard isn't random, but this thing can hit a lot harder. Another card that can help us out with repeatable discard is Creeping Dread. It's an enchantment for 3 and a black, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, each player discards a card. Each opponent who discarded a card that shares a card type with the card you discarded loses 3 life. So this forces all players to discard, including ourselves, but it also punishes players that match our card. And again, whereas our opponents won't be replacing the card that they discarded, we will. It's also important for us, though, to have some discard effects that we can use at any time, like Funeral Charm and Mindlash Sliver. Funeral Charm is an instant that says, choose one. Target player discards a card, or target creature gets +2/-1 until end of turn, or target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn. Generally, we're going to be choosing that first option. Again, keep in mind that Tinybones can trigger at the end of each player's turn. So, Instant Speed Discard gives us the opportunity to draw more than one card on each trip around the table. And then Mindlash Sliver has all slivers have pay 1, sacrifice this creature, each player discards a card. So this does hit everyone, but again, it's at instant speed, so this can come in really handy. Up next, there's Nezumi Shortfang, which helps us out in multiple ways. By paying 1 into black and tapping it, target opponent discards a card, then if that player has no cards in hand, we flip Nezumi Shortfang. It flips into Stab Whisker the Odious, which first off is an amazing name, and it has at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player loses 1 life for each card fewer than 3 in their hand. So this can force discard and also drain opponents too. And then Greelvine Raker truly lives up to its name. By paying X into black, we tap and discard 2 cards from our hand, and target player discards X cards from their hand at random. So though this will cost us 2 cards, again, we're going to get one of them back, and also we can just completely wipe out an opponent's hand. We've even got a land that can help us out as well with Gaia Reach Sanitarium. It taps for a colorless, and we can also pay 2 and tap it, and each player draws a card, then discards a card. So again, every player is essentially going to be looting, but at the end of the turn, we get an extra card thanks to Tinybones. Now, as good as these cards are, they're nowhere near as powerful as the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the #1 card out of our 99, and the Golden Pig of this deck is Bottomless Pit. It's an enchantment for 1 black, and its Oracle text reads, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card at random. This is incredibly effective and brutal in this deck. This is guaranteed discard on every single player's turn. That means every single time around the table, we're going to be drawing 4 cards from Tinybones. And again, keep in mind that that discard is random. So again, this is the most effective discard, and it's guaranteed card draw on every single turn. Yeah, that's Golden Pig worthy. Outside of our commander, though, let's talk about some other ways to drain out our opponents with Megrim, Raider's Wake, and Fel Spectre. Megrim is an enchantment for 2 and a black, and it says whenever an opponent discards a card, Megrim deals 2 damage to that player. Again, we're going to be making our opponents discard a ton of cards, which is already a brutal thing, but yeah, now we just add a little more pain to that. And then Raider's Wake essentially does the exact same thing, but more. It's an enchantment for 3 and a black, and it says whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life, but it also has Raid. At the beginning of your end step, if you attack with a creature this turn, target opponent discards a card. Again, with all those creatures that have discard ETBs, we don't really care if they survive combat, so just swinging out with them and making someone else discard another card can be a really big thing. And then Fel Spectre is a 1/3 Spectre with flying that costs 3 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card, and whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Again, draining, discarding, all the things we want. This is very effective in this deck. Some other ways, though, to punish our opponents come with Wheel of Torture and Shrieking Affliction. Wheel of Torture is an artifact for 3, and it reads, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, Wheel of Torture deals X damage to that player, where X is 3 minus the number of cards in their hand. So if our opponents have no cards in their hand, say hello to 3 damage each turn. And speaking of 3 each turn, there's Shrieking Affliction. It's an enchantment for a black that says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, he or she loses 3 life. Again, this deck is going to be incredibly effective at getting rid of our opponent's hands, so this is an easy requirement for us to meet. And as an enchantment that we can get out early for just 1 mana, this can do a ton of work for us. And again, keep in mind that of course we've got Tinybones who can still dish out the pain as well. If you're looking to play this deck, consider joining the amazing PlayEDH Discord. It's a great way to play Commander over webcam. In the description below, you'll find their Discord invite link, as well as the tier that this deck has been approved at next to the deck list. So if you want to pick it up and play it as is, you can, and be sure to read their welcome information for more details. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.